A farmer steps outside his house in rural Bavaria. It is March 1922. The snow is fresh, untouched. He sees footprints. They come from the edge of the dark forest behind the farm. They lead all the way to his front door. But there are no footprints leading back. Someone walked out of those woods and never left. 3 days later, his entire family was dead. The farm was called Hinterkaifeck, which roughly means behind the village. And that's exactly where it was, isolated, surrounded by forest, miles from the nearest town. 6 people lived there: Andreas Gruber, the elderly patriarch, his wife Cecilia, their widowed daughter Victoria, her 2 young children, 7-year-old Cecilia, and baby Joseph, and the family's newly hired maid, Maria, who had only arrived that very day. In the weeks before the murders, strange things had been happening. The family's previous maid had quit months earlier. She refused to explain why, only that she heard things in the attic at night, things she couldn't explain. Then Andreas found a newspaper in the house, a newspaper from Munich. Nobody in the family had bought it. Nobody in the area even subscribed to that paper. Keys went missing. Sounds came from above. A lock was broken on a side door. And then, those footprints in the snow. Andreas told neighbors what he'd seen. He was not a man who scared easily. He laughed it off. He never called the police. On the evening of March 31st, 1922, we don't know exactly what happened. There were no survivors. What investigators believe is this: the killer, or killers, lured each person to the barn, one by one. Andreas first, then his wife, then Victoria, then little Cecilia. Each one was struck with a mattock, a heavy farming tool, and killed. Then the killer walked back into the farmhouse. The maid, Maria, was killed in her room. She had been there only 1 day. Baby Joseph, 2 years old, asleep in his crib, was also killed. 6 people, 1 night, and then silence. For 4 days, nobody came. The family had a reputation for keeping to themselves. Neighbors noticed the mail piling up. Young Cecilia didn't come to school. The family didn't appear at church on Sunday. On April 4th, a neighbor decided to investigate. He found the front door locked. He went to the barn. Inside, he found them. But here is what makes Hinterkaifeck different from any other murder case. After the killings, the killer stayed. The fire in the farmhouse had been lit. The animals had been fed. Food had been eaten from the kitchen. Someone had been living there for 3 days, with 6 dead bodies, and then they vanished without a single trace. More than 100 investigators were brought in. Over a century of forensic advances have been applied to the case. Students at a German police academy reopened it as recently as 2007. The case has never been solved. Nobody was ever charged. Nobody was ever arrested. The farm itself was demolished in 1923, not as part of the investigation, but because the community wanted to erase what had happened there. During the demolition, they found the murder weapon hidden in the attic where someone had been sleeping, watching, waiting. We don't know who it was. We don't know why. We don't know how long they had been there before that cold March night. All we know is what Andreas saw in the snow. Footprints that led in and never led out. Some stories don't have endings. Some crimes don't get solved. And some nights, in some places, something happens that leaves a question hanging in the air for 100 years. What made that family so certain they were safe? What stopped them from calling for help when the signs were right in front of them? And wherever that killer went after those 3 days in the silent farmhouse, did they ever do it again? Nobody knows. If this story kept you up at night, you're not alone. Subscribe to Never Told Stories, because some of the most terrifying stories in the world actually happened.